friends. Friends is in the Quaker tradition. Welcome, brothers and sisters, as in the Union movement in the African American culture. Welcome, comrades, as in the communist tradition. So the title of the show, Iranian scientist was murdered to prevent vaccine. I'm getting that information from a post I shared from the Gray Zone, I believe from a Iranian teacher who believes the scientist that was murdered by Israel may have involved with producing the vaccine or procuring the vaccine for the Iranian people who are already suffering from COVID. And this situation is being exacerbated by the sanctions. The sanctions are preventing people from receiving medical care. I don't seem to be getting any live viewership. I'm a bit tired. I worked today. I have to be up at 2 a.m. But I felt like I had something I needed to say. The idea that the U.S. empire, when you think about it on a theoretical level, that the U.S. empire is trying to hold back history, is purposely killing people all over the world, creating mass devastation and chaos for the benefit of the oligarchs. The banking, the oil and banking class. When you see the specific instances every day, our friends and neighbors, most predominantly in the black and brown community, poor black and brown community, dying from COVID here, and then oppressed people in oppressed nations like Iran, who are hit with sanctions, Venezuela, dying from COVID over there. All to continue the profits of these oligarchs, these banking oil oligarchs. We die. Poor black and brown folks die. Brown folks in oppressed nations all over the world die, are murdered from neglect, from sanctions. And when you see it, an outright murder. This is Iranian scientists have been murdered in the past, and it came out after the fact. The U.S. knew about it or had direct links and planning these murders. It's most likely that the recent murder of a scientist was planned by the United States. Is most likely it was planned, knew about from the United States. It was definitely funded by the United States, because Israel is almost entirely funded by the United States. We pay for their medical care. We have no medical care here. The U.S. borrows money that we pay the interest on to oppress the Palestinians and kill Iranian scientists, so the Iranian people do not have access to a vaccine. Literally murdering people. And this is at the beginning of the year. On my phone, I'm not sure if you can see, I put this picture. No, let me find one. All right, so here's a blank screen. I put this picture of an Iranian mosque, very beautiful mosaic and colors. And I put this on my phone because in the plans for retaliation, I think my video is a little blurry. Go ahead and fix that right quick. So in Trump's plans for retaliation, when Trump and the United States empire murdered Qasem Soleimani, a beloved general, a warrior. Not just the Iranian fighters are not imperial soldiers like in the United States, where they're in the fight to get healthcare, education, and get back home. They're warriors defending their people. Their heart is in it. And they're defeating ISIS to protect their country, legitimately protect their country. Everything they say about US soldiers is true about Iranian soldiers. It was true about the leader of Iranian soldiers, Qasem Soleimani, a hero not only for the Iranian people, but for all people, stopping these disgusting terrorist gangs that are created by the United States to create instability, to keep the Middle East poor, to keep the Middle East dependent. So the U.S. doesn't have competitors, and it also helps destabilize the surrounding regions, the surrounding countries. So I put that image of the Iranian mosque on my phone as a screensaver. It's been there since January of this year. It's almost been a year. It's been there to remind me of what this empire is willing to destroy. Art, culture, beauty. They will destroy it to maintain their profits. I'm not sure if I see Helen Woolley, Australian comrade. I really enjoyed your interview with David Fox. Very knowledgeable, very well spoken. People check that out. Please subscribe to David Fox's page and check out that interview with Helen Woolley. And she's on via Facebook. I was banned from going live on my personal Facebook page because I shared an image of the trailer I lived in last year. Last year, I bought an Iranian flag to go to protests against the hostilities towards Iran. And I put the Iranian flag up in my mobile home. And I took a picture of it, but I didn't share it on Facebook. And now, after the murder of the Iranian scientist who was not part of a non-existent weapons program, but most likely was part of helping to either procure or create a COVID vaccine for the Iranian people. And because I posted that picture of a Iranian flag on my trailer, and because in the description I used the name Qasem Soleimani, and I referred to him as beloved, I have lost my going live privileges on my personal Facebook. I believe I found a way around it. I used one of my secondary accounts, my personal account, added myself as an admin and of my page, Anti-Imperialist America, and I should be going live from Dust James' Anti-Imperialist America page as well. I was going to see if I could create a watch group on my phone. Let me try that right quick. That way all my friends are. I already got a like on that video. Let me see if I can try to create a watch group. Share. Now it's just letting me copy link. I don't believe I can create a watch group. That's pretty cool though. Well, thanks for everybody for being with me. Alex, Pugliese, Iran isn't using the US dollar. The imperialist oligarchs can't have it. And that's exactly right. If you look at the International Society, I don't remember what it's called, the Oakland Marxist. I share them out all the time. The Marxist Library in Oakland. I talked about a video they recently did, a presentation they recently did, where the entire world is basically forced to adopt the US dollar as the reserve currency. And when the US economy, when the US Federal Reserve pumps out money, the inflation actually goes to the third world countries, goes to developing countries. The deflation is defected to the rest of the world and not in the imperial core. It's the I said I shared that video, and on that video, now let me go ahead and show you on screen. There you go. And on that video, I pointed out the entire global currency system is a Ponzi scheme. And those are the levers of power. And the Federal Reserve and the US government can essentially destroy entire countries' economies with a flip of a switch, with a touch of a keyboard. I mean, that's how much power the imperialists still have. The Eastern trade bloc, surrounded by China, Russia, Iran, is growing, but you cannot underestimate the power of imperialism led by U.S. imperialism. I think anti-imperialism is Marxist politics. As Sheng Yu, I don't remember the friend. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, friend. He called Taiwan-based hip hop artist Shang Yu. His article said the highest stage of class struggle is anti-imperialism. And David Fox actually, I don't know if he knew what he was doing or not, but actually repeated the name of that article on Working Class Revolt Friday, which I thought was cool. It's clever. We're a community. We bounce ideas off each other. I learned stuff from Caleb. I learned stuff from David Fox. I learned stuff from, Gray Zone and Empire Files. And a lot of us that are in communication from her, we make advancements, and then we learn from others' advancements, and then we make more advancements upon those advancements. And anti-imperialism truly is the main issue. I think the majority of why so many Western leftists, especially leftists in the United States, don't understand politics is because they underestimate imperialism. The Social Dems. The Social Dems put faith in candidates like Bernie and the Squad and AOC. And Bernie, the Squad, and AOC are horrible monsters. Just by proximity, they are evil, disgusting monsters because they are a part of, actively engage in, and fund U.S. imperialism. And U.S. imperialism destroys whole countries, keeps whole regions in poverty, kills Iranian scientists because they're trying to create a vaccine, holds sanctions that deny people getting medical equipment. And it's concentrated. If you read Lenin's Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, I don't even think Lenin could have predicted how concentrated the power of the imperialist is. The whole financial system is created by them. The military bases in 800 countries all over the world. Europe and Australian governments are basically their lapdogs. Israel, puppet regimes all over the world, even countries that are independent and strong, like China, are forced to have to make deals with the U.S. just to exist. China in 1979, before the opening up, was still in poverty. They made a lot of advancements. They did a lot of sharing. I mean, Mao started talking with Nixon, but until they made a deal with the main economic superpower, that is just how much control the United States has. And that is why Iran was trying to open up, because you basically have no place in the global market unless you bow to the whims of US imperialism. If you're not doing something for imperialism led by US imperialism, you're completely locked out. You can't get medical equipment. You starve. North Korea's locked out. And it wasn't until like Vietnam had to accept IMF loans and go through all these conditions. It wasn't that these countries aren't socialist. It's the power of the enemy is so strong. Simply to exist, they have to make these horrible deals. And China made a horrible deal, but they've maintained their sovereignty. And they've been able to lift millions of people out of poverty. And Iran has been able to lift millions of people out of poverty. We're taught in U.S. media that Iran is a right-wing government because it has Islamist in the name. But the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, a popular revolution led by rural workers, has control over the economy. It is not laissez-faire neoliberal capitalism, because laissez-faire neoliberal capitalism in the third world always results in mass poverty and starvation and death. Everything they say about communism is actually true in the third world and every country that has adopted the policies supported by the United States. Mass poverty, chaos, and destruction. Honduras, Haiti, the list goes on. The only places that have adopted capitalism but aren't in mass poverty and chaos are the ones being propped up by the United States because they serve some benefit. And that's the entire imperialist bloc, that's Europe, that's Australia, and that's countries like Taiwan, that's countries like South Korea. They're serving a purpose in putting down a rival of the power of U.S. imperialism. So I guess I'll go through the super chats. I've been on about 17 minutes. I'm not. I'm usually a lot more fired up, but I'm really tired. But I am absolutely devastated every time. I mean, on my interview with Shang Yu, I actually called myself a person of faith, which is crazy because, I was deeply religious in high school. And then, I was deeply religious in high school, and I really loved Martin Luther, who put a message on the church's door. These are the problems with the church. And he tacked it on the door. And when I was in high school, I wrote an essay called All. And I was pissed that all the churches, how could all these churches support the war and go along and say they believe in the pacifist, progressive messages of Jesus Christ and support these wars? So I wrote a message called All. And all people must be valued and took into consideration, regardless of their religion. And a murder is a murder. And none of these churches should be involved in the wars. I went around my small town and I taped that to all the churches in my town. And needless to say, the police showed up and said, you need to mail things and not trespass on private property. I probably would have been arrested if I wasn't 14 at the time that I did that I did that. And then when I got into college, I think my last religious experience was with the Quakers, and then I fully embraced scientific socialism and became atheist. And just in recent years, I've been reacquainting myself with my faith, and I don't really follow any religion. I don't believe Jesus is our savior. I don't believe that any book is the all powerful word of God. But there's this feeling inside me. It's many people of faith say it's a power and a force of strength um, that it's almost like you have a wall to jump off of. It's a force of inner strength, and it's meaning there's something bigger than yourself. And I guess you can call it conscious, revolutionary, spiritual humanity. I believe there's some kind of spiritual connection of all human beings. All human life is sacred, and everyone should be treated with justice and truth. We should try to improve the lives of all human beings. I guess it's some kind of revolutionary humanitarianism. It's a spiritual level, and I gain strength, and it convinces me to get up every morning, be a better person, and to do these lives and to speak out against the injustices that are killing our brothers and sisters in the third world and keeping us poor here. So I mean, it's still a big part of where I'm coming from. This book here is about one of my ancestors, Ashel Nettleton, and Ashel Nettleton was a one of the leaders in the Second Great Awakening, um, and he also gains a strength from his faith, and a happiness and a drive that's almost inexplainable. And I think whatever this force I'm tapping into is what the Iranian people tapped into when they were tired of the Shah who was imposed by the United States. The Shah, the reason why there wasn't a socialist, or I mean, you may consider Iranian socialist. There wasn't the reason why there wasn't a Marxist by name revolution in Iran is because the Shah killed and suppressed all the socialists and communists. And it was the religious people, predominantly the rural religious people, that led the Islamic revolution. And I believe it was a part of that energy and that faith that I hold. I guess it's universal that they were tired of living under the boot of a dictator of U.S. imperialism. And they formed the Islamic Revolution. They kicked out the Shah. And they've been a strong, independent country ever since. And they've raised millions of rural workers out of poverty. Iran is not only do we have a common enemy, our own government, U.S. imperialism, Iran is a true ally of the American people. And we have far more in common with the Iranian people than we do with the Bezoses and the Bilderbergers and the Rockefellers and the disgusting, horrible scum of the earth that run this country, own this country. And the reason why Iran says death to America is because they're saying it to the same people that keep us broke here and take our wages away here. Solidarity with Iran. All power to the people, power to the oppressed nations, power to our oppressed Iranian brothers and sisters, and power to their anti-imperialist government. Solidarity, international solidarity. I grew up in poverty, and to hear a government whose goal is to take people out of poverty in Iran, in China, that is my goal. I don't want, the reason why I do what I do is because I don't want another person to have to live, and I don't want any other human being or child or woman or girl or boy to live through poverty like I had to live through. And how to go about changing that is increasing the productive forces by planning the economy and using that to invest in infrastructure, invest in the people, and raise people out of poverty. China is doing that. Iran is doing that. The anti-imperialist bloc is doing what is necessary. And they are stopping the force that is holding back history, our own government, U.S. imperialism, the greater imperialist bloc led by U.S. imperialism. I guess I'll get back into the comments. U.S. government doesn't borrow U.S. dollars, it prints it. That's exactly right. And when they print it, the inflation hits the global south and not the imperialist core. Shout out to Class Analysis. Gray Zone and Empire Files are amazing. Gray Zone is powerful stuff. I think they recently did a video on Honduras, on how the Honduras, there was a 2009 coup, and almost the majority of migrants coming to the United States have been coming from Honduras because of the chaos and poverty that was caused from the coup in Honduras. And recently they went on they had a hurricane, and in the hurricane, people were on top of their buildings for days without food because the government installed by the U.S. is a criminal gangster organization that enriches themselves and has no concern in helping the people. So it's basically the Wild West with a gang ruling it for the benefit of U.S. imperialism. This means murders. This means rapes. This means chaos. This means mass migration. And it's all for the benefit of the U.S. bourgeoisie and the imperialist system. The U.S. imperialism is the greatest enemy humanity has ever faced. It's immoral and evil to the core. Just as slavery, what was facing John Brown, today what we face is imperialism, and we must build power to destroy it. I'm going to continue on with some of the comments here. Like I said, shout out to our comrade in Australia, Helen Woolley. Is imperialism an international system led by the U.S. Wall Street, or are these competing imperialists? No, there is one imperialist bloc. It has developed to the point where the imperialists are no longer competing. They might have minor scuffles amongst each other. One of those minor scuffles was the Iraq War. Saddam was going to change away from the petrodollar to dealing oil and euros. And the reason why the French government was so opposed to the Iraq War had nothing to do with war crimes and everything to do that they wanted the power and the oil and to use euros to change for the deal with the French. And the U.S. said that is not happening. And they put their imperialist bloc allies of the French in line by unilaterally attacking Iraq. U.S. is the supreme imperialist power, and all of the other imperialist countries are behind them. And the only other bloc that is doing anything against it is the anti-imperialist bloc. And the anti-imperialist bloc is not monopoly capitalist. It is largely socialist or non-interventionist or semi-socialist. Russia uses as nationalized their oil companies. The main force controlling the imperialist bloc in the United States is the oil and banking interest. China has public banking. I mean, whether you want to call it socialist or not socialist, it is an improvement of the backwards, brutal, concentrated form of imperialism, which is the Western bloc the imperialist bloc, firmly led by U.S. imperialism. I mean, there's minor disputes, but it's come down to two major global forces. And the anti-imperialist will win. The empire will decay on itself. Now, what's that mean in our lifetime? What's that mean for the revolution? That's all up in the air. But I am firmly convinced that although the different pieces of the imperialist bloc may compete with amongst each other, these things are quickly settled. They're not fighting world wars with each other like they did in World War I or World War II. The U.S. is firmly in control. And when a country steps out of line, they invade that country. Or if a country does a deal with another country, like Iran, try to do it with like Iraq, try to do it with France, they destroy that country. And that's why they had the largest military budget. The entire thing is a power Ponzi scheme, and it's backed up by the raw power of the U.S. military. Hopefully that answered your question. This is what I'm saying here. I have not read anywhere else. These are my own innovative. This is hopefully. I mean, it's real. I mean, there's probably other people coming up with this, but I haven't read as much as I know. This is a political innovation that I have developed. I'm pretty sure others have simultaneously developed it because it is off of the material conditions that I'm going off of. Mr. Zach 888. Japan and India has a caste system. Socialist nations do away with the caste system. This is not necessarily true. Based on my definition of socialism, my definition of socialism is simply evolving past what Marx described as capitalism in book Capital, which means the primary motive is the profit motive. The primary motive is no longer the profit motive, and they're trying to invest in their country or get people out of poverty. This does not mean you get away with all inequality. And India, they still have practiced some of their caste system, but it's legally outlawed. I'm not sure about the caste system in Japan, but if you look in the United States, there's a racial caste system that still firmly exists. A lot of capitalist countries have different forms of caste system, and there's inequality in China, but I still consider them socialist because the government is firmly in control. The government trumps the profit motive, and they're using that to lift millions of people out of poverty and advance the productive forces to get closer to the ability of achieving a higher form of socialism. Now, you can call the current form capitalism, but whatever it is, whatever the anti-imperialist bloc is developing, including Iran, is a step above a juster world that is not the absolute concentrated evil of U.S. imperialism. The imperialist bloc led by U.S. imperialism is absolutely concentrated evil and decay that's lashing out. I mean, and the world is advancing, and as they fall, they're going to go out kicking and streaming and as violent as they can go. So, socialism is not the end of inequality. Socialism is the end of the rule of profits. Thank you for your panel. Well, thank you, class analysis. Yeah, I would say capitalism, it's not even capitalism that's the great Satan. Imperialism is the great Satan. U.S. imperialism, monopoly capitalism. Shout out Jenny Lynn. Okay, capitalism needs desperate people to work for slave wages. Capitalism preys on the poor. That's all correct, and that's all true. Right on. Well, I didn't do a long show tonight. I'm about 34 minutes in. I've gone through all of the comments. Shout out Joey S. Hey Dust. Well, thank you. Thanks for being here. I guess I did a short conversation tonight. We have so my revolutionary strategy is to reject wholly the political infrastructure of the imperialists, completely no dealings whatsoever with the social dems. Um, they were all enemies of the people. Go deep within the cultural roots and study your community, study your working class community, study your oppressed national community, your Afro American community, Chicano community. Study your roots and where you come from and what is good and what is just and what is the positive things coming out of your culture, and use that to craft your message to appeal directly to the people. And this is especially important within the belly of the beast. Che Guevara said he envies the people, the North American communists, because they are in a unique position, a powerful position to destroy the beast that is destroying and exploiting the entire world. So we look deep within our communities, our oppressed communities, our working class communities, Afro-American community, Chicano community, look within our roots and our culture and all that is just and all that is true, to craft a message to spread to the people, to cut the lines between our community and the imperialist. Cut the rhetoric. Stop our people from having Stockholm syndrome and this empire that is exploiting us. And form revolutionary, protracted struggles from the masses to the masses that completely opposes U.S. imperialism. And have those communities of resistance stand and struggle with the oppressed nations of the world. Joey S. thoughts on current China bashing. China is a socialist country in my definition. They escaped the rule of profits. They have much inequality and many problems, but they've escaped the rule of profits. They're controlling their economy in a way that has lifted millions of people out of poverty. They are a sovereign nation, and they are allies of U.S. workers. Any anti-imperialist country is an ally. Anti-imperialist countries are being forced into socialism because the capitalist economic system does not work. It is inefficient. It is inferior. The only reason why it appears to work is because of the imperialist exploitation. It creates a slight material abundance in the first world. But in all reality, imperialism is holding back progress, holding back growth. And I believe that even workers within the imperial core will have a higher standard of living after the fall of empire, because the productive forces in the third world, we've grown up so much, and we'll grow our own productive forces, that we're denying ourselves from a better future, a higher material form of existence. For the little bit of crumbs we get from this empire, we're denying the world and ourselves a higher mode of production, an advanced, more fulfilling life. So we should be praising China, the Chinese people. They are allies and our brothers and sisters. And as Ashada Shakur Panther said, only a fool lets someone else tell them who their enemy is, because they're our enemies. The empire is our enemy. What are your thoughts on materialist Marxist critique of Einstein's relative? I honestly don't really understand the question. Einstein was a tanky communist who supported Stalin And Einstein recognized there was a conspiracy against Stalin, and he wrote of it. He had his own critique um, of socialism, but I think Einstein was a little naive. I mean, he wasn't a on the ground revolutionary like Stalin was. I hope that probably answered your question in reverse. We need critical thinking. Do you think China will fight back in any ways against the imperialism of South American countries by USA corporate conglomerates, or to what extent? Well, they already are. I mean, the reason why Bolivia was the has the most successful under Morales had the most successful economy in Latin America. They had the highest growing GDP in Latin America, and they did this through the superior system of socialism and Chinese loans. Chinese loans with way lower interest rates, way fewer conditions than what countries like Vietnam were forced to do with accepting IMF loans. IMF loans and imperialist loans come with sovereignty breaking rules and austerity. The loans that and the trade deals that China is offering Africa and offering South America truly are win-win deals. They are not the United States imperialists. No matter how much your anarchists or your radlib friends that tell you that China is imperialist, China is not imperialist. They're engaging in win-win trade, and they're supporting the entire anti-imperialist bloc. Okay. At least the U.S. use synthetic lift to criticize China via human rights abuses. Exactly. When it comes to groups like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, were they out there condemning the murder of the scientist? Were they condemning the sabotage done in Venezuela? No. They only condemn countries and that are opposed to the larger imperialist interests. These so-called human rights organizations are just are just another tentacle of the U.S. imperialists to attack anti-imperialists. Mr. Zach 888, the right wing are pro-business and people become rich, so they won't be swayed to criticize China as much. I'm not sure which country's right wing you're talking about. And it's usually in socialist countries, it's usually the rich who became rich because of the Communist Party. So the Communist Party, the Socialist Party, like in Iran, most of the reformers who want to deal with the U.S. are people who got rich because the socialist or communist or populist movement was able to break out from the West. And these spoiled rich motherfuckers in those countries are used to foment color revolutions. I think we already did that one. Let me try to get this lower down. Okay. Do you think China will fight back? Okay. I think I've answered all the questions. I've gone up and I've gone down. All right. I believe that's going to do it for tonight. No one else wants to get in the chat. And thank you all. Thanks, everyone. So as we study our communities, we learn the good, we study our community's culture and understanding, way of life and depth. We craft ideology, innovate ideology, innovate our political understanding. We can build communities of resistance to the empire. I was kind of getting on an ending speech there, but some of these questions are too good. I think I'll do a few more. Yes, people think China rising is just one side and took advantage of USA. But lots of U.S. businesses get rich doing business with China. That's right. I mean, honestly, it was a horrible deal because the U.S. was the power broker. Whenever you do a deal with a more powerful entity, I mean, that entity is going to win. But I mean, they've negotiated very well. They've been able to maintain their sovereignty, but there's been a lot of bad stuff about it. I mean, the deal China made with the West was a double-edged sword. I mean, they have inequality. Um, they've given all this material wealth to the U.S. I mean, but they're still firmly independent and they're able to offer deals. They've risen themselves out of poverty. So let's get into this. This is the one I really wanted to answer. Helen Woolley, how do we explain the national question? And this, so you don't just go out like you're a white person, you go out to a person of color. Well, I don't even like that term. I say Afro-American people, Aborigines, y'all in Australia, or whatever the folks call themselves there, whatever folks call themselves. You go out to and be like, hey, you're an oppressed nation, you got rights. And you almost sound like you're a segregationist. Like, oh, you should be, you're not part of America, you'd be something else. But this is why I believe national oppression and national question is so important. National oppression is the only scientific way to not be class reductionist. I mean, you can explain class, you can explain on a scientific basis, it's exploitation, and the capitalists exploit the working class. Well, the oppressed nations are super exploited. They're groups of working class communities that through different systems are kept down even more and are exploited even further. So they're super exploited. So the only way of dealing with this form of oppression, national oppression, is to dismantle the systems that produce this super exploitation. Why do black people in the US have like 1/500th of the wealth of what white folks do? Because of these systems of, people call it institutional racism. It's institutional class oppression. The way they draw neighborhoods up, the school systems, the credit status, the over policing, the racist courts. These are all examples of the systems that maintain national oppression. And the only way to address the issues of national oppression is to understand it on a scientific basis and dismantle systems of national oppression. And that is the difference between a scientific national liberation and the bourgeois identity politics that can be easily manipulated by the bourgeoisie and by the imperialist. That's why you have Kamala Harris, the first Asian African American woman to be one of the architects of one of the main, not one of the architects, one of the main enforcers of the new Jim Crow, mass incarceration, which is a major component of national oppression. So you have the first Black Asian woman who was an enforcer of one of the main tenets of national oppression, who was the running mate to an architect of one of the major components of national oppression that hold down our black and brown brothers and sisters and make them super exploited. Exploit them more, give them less rights. What's that do for the average white worker? Having to work side by side with someone who gets less rights, less wages, that brings everyone down. An injury to one is an injury to all. Solidarity, black and white, unite and fight. And these aren't just words. These aren't just throw lines. This can be understood on a scientific basis. And that scientific basis is the super exploitation from national oppression. I shared out on my page a good Lenin quote. Any comrade of an oppressor nation that does not recognize and advocate the propaganda of oppressed nations is an imperialist and a scoundrel. And especially in the United States, the national question is extremely important in the prison house of nations, which is the imperial core of the United States. So, all right, there you go. We got Red Spin Sports. Keep up the great work. Really enjoying the show. Check out Red Spin Sports for socialist analysis of sport in America. Oh, that's good. That I believe you are part of I call the United Front Against Imperialism. The United Front Against Imperialism. Study the culture. Sports is a major part of culture. If you can study sports and use that to convince people to be anti-imperialist, more power to you. Thank you. Folks, check that page out. Bing 4, a bourgeois party cannot be reformed. It is into a revolutionary party. So why would we assume a revolutionary party can be reformed into a bourgeois party? That is interesting. Why would we assume a revolutionary party could be reformed into a bourgeois party? It is interesting. There might be a shift change. I mean, it's easier to go backwards than it is forwards. All right, thank you. Skin. So important. You're talking about the national question. Stalin's best writings on the national, and that's exactly right. Stalin. Probably study this. Stalin's Foundations of Leninism. Stalin was not only a great revolutionary, he was a revolutionary theorist. And one of his major contributions to Marxist theory was the understanding of the national question. And the great black nationalist Harry Haywood was a communist who wrote the theory of the Black Belt South, was trained with Lenin and Stalin. And it's the only real scientific way of understanding the exploitation of our African American brothers and sisters, the only way of really understanding the exploitation of our Chicano Raza brothers and sisters, and the scientific socialism, national oppression, is the only way of dismantling the oppression of our African American, Afro-American, Chicano Raza brothers and sisters, and is the only way to free ourselves. White-skinned workers will never be free as long as our darker-skinned workers are in bondage. Elites put Obama and Kamala into power so they can reflect criticism. Critics are then labeled as racist for calling these puppets out. This is part of the cultural wars, and that's exactly right. They appeal to different segments of the population. They basically pin they use whatever they can, racism, xenophobia, even progressive tendencies, to basically divide rural and urban workers. The political parties are little more than appealing to rural and urban workers, keeping them divided and blaming the other when nothing gets done. So if we look at why don't we have the majority of the people, rural and urban, support single payer health care, support raising the wage. Why don't we have these things? Well, people vote their chosen party and then they blame the other party for not getting it. But what do they always seem to pass? They always seem to pass war. They always seem to pass austerity. They always seem to pass more police. They always seem to pass more deportations and more force along the border. Everything that benefits the imperialists and the bourgeoisie is passed, and everything that we want, they blame the other party for not giving us. And they even use this on an international scale. Think about what the United States did to Iran. So, I mean, both the imperialist capitalist parties hate Iran, but But the Democrats were willing to do a deal with Iran. And the only reason why they were able to do that deal was because the reformer elements in Iran were elected. So the reformer elements did this deal with Obama. And then a new president was elected. And then they immediately took that deal away. So, I mean, they basically use that same bullshit they use on us against the Iranian people. The Iranian people wanted to be able to open up and get into the larger economy and have sanctions taken off of them. They voted in a reformist government, and the U.S. played them for everything they had. And they used the same, oh, blame the other party. Blame the other, oh, it was the Democrats, it was the Republicans. The people of Iran aren't being able to open up. They're being able to deny medicine. We are the people of Iran. The oppressed workers here, the oppressed nations within the United States, the workers in the United States, we're being treated bad and put down and exploited by the same people that are trying to destroy the lives of our Iranian brothers and sisters, our Venezuelan brothers and sisters. Unite and fight, build the united front against imperialism. International solidarity. Do you believe malls all need to recognize? I don't know what a mall is. The sovereignty of the Black Belt Nation, the Deep Black South, like Harry held. Well, I mean, these are complicated issues. I mean, essentially, whatever the people decide, um, if they decide to be independent, that is their full rights. But my emphasis on understanding the national question is understanding the oppression and understanding how to deal with and dismantle that oppression. The issue of self determination is completely up to the African American people. Now, I will say, if you don't, whoever these malls are, if you don't understand the science of national oppression, the institutions of national oppression, you will never truly be able to dismantle it. And you are probably chauvinist, and you are probably, and what you're advocating won't work. And what you're advocating will probably continue national oppression if you don't seek to understand it and seek to dismantle it. Oh, I see. ML, you put malls, but I believe you just edited MLs. Yes, MLs have to recognize, at least understand national oppression. Any comrade who does not advocate the propaganda and the understanding of the oppressed nation is an imperialist and a scoundrel, as Lenin said. I'm spreading yours and Caleb's socialism messages on Reddit, YouTube, and Facebook, and debating people. Hope to win some over. Right on. I'm just one person. I'm a humble home here in North Carolina. I'm a truck driver. I work 80 plus hours a week. I come home and I spend time with y'all to promote innovative ideas and ways of addressing our communities to spread socialism. All right, right on, everybody. So I'll start my little ending speech. As we study our cultures, understand our cultures, come from deep roots within working class communities, to cut the strings from the imperialist, join with our brothers and sisters all around the world with a common enemy. We can destroy U.S. imperialism. We can form a new America and a new society where rational planning can control the economy in a way and give us all a better life. We will have a say over our lives. All power to the people.